sucks the Smales kid picks his nose.
Hey, there's a new report that's out that kind of makes Donald Trump look really bad, so why don't we take a look at it, shall we? This is from a betting odds website. Harris wins 59 times out of 40. It was earlier reported that she would win by 48 to 41, and that was not even 3 hours ago. So these projections, they keep changing, and they're not looking good for Donald Trump. However, I wanted to get a full picture of what's going on with the election, so I found a very informative video that will take us on the journey of information and numbers.
The 2024 election is coming up fast, so let's take a look at the latest polling and betting market data to see who is winning the race to the White House. Starting with the states, former President Trump will win. Maine's 2nd District, West Virginia, South Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Iowa, Kansas,
Ooh.
Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Idaho, and Alaska. Now, for the states Vice President Harris will win. Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, Colorado, Illinois, Maine's 1st District, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and finally, Washington, D.C. Now, let's go through the battleground states that will ultimately decide this election. We'll start in the West and make our way across the country.
Yeah, I'm kind of sick of the fact that this is how it works. Like, this is getting a little old.
Arizona, former President Trump is showing a lead of
Battleground states. Ugh.
1 to 4 points. This state has become increasingly competitive, flipping to the Democrats in 2020 for the first time since 1996. Moving to Nevada, Trump and Harris are in a tight race, with more recent polls giving Trump a slight edge. Nevada has leaned Democratic in recent presidential elections, but remains a swing state. Heading to the Rust Belt, Wisconsin shows Harris with a growing lead, now up to 4 points. This state has been a true battleground, famously flipping to Trump in 2016 before returning to the Democratic column in 2020. In Michigan, Harris holds a lead of 3.5 points. Like with
I'm wondering if they're going to include any midterm data in this.
Wisconsin,
I am
Michigan was part of the
having a hell of a time with that word when I am on camera for some reason. Data.
blue wall that Trump breached in 2016, but it swung back to the Democrats in 2020. Pennsylvania is showing a dead heat between Trump and Harris, with Trump ahead in the newest polls. This state has been crucial in recent elections, flipping between parties in the last 2 cycles. Moving north, Minnesota shows Harris with a solid 7-point lead. Despite being considered a battleground, Minnesota has consistently voted Democratic in presidential elections since 1976. In New Hampshire, Harris leads
Whoa. When was that Illinois went red?
since 1976.
Bush Dukakis. No kidding.
In New Hampshire, Harris leads by 5 points. New Hampshire has voted Democratic in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections. Virginia shows Harris with a 3-point lead. Once a reliable Republican state, Virginia has voted blue in the last 4 presidential elections. Heading south, North Carolina is tied between Trump and Harris.
Again, I'm really shocked at the lack of midterm data that they use in these.
But the state's voting history suggests Trump may have an edge. North Carolina has gone Republican in 10 of the last 11 presidential
In my defense, we all have one word that bothers us, okay?
elections. Finally, in Georgia, Trump holds a lead of 1 to 4 points. Georgia was a major upset to Republicans in 2020, voting blue in a presidential election for the first time since 1992. Based on this polling data, and considering recent voting history, our current projection shows a very tight race. Harris seems to have an edge in the upper Midwest and Mid-Atlantic, while Trump is holding on to key southern states and making the race competitive in states that have recently trended Democratic. With several states showing tight races or ties, this election remains highly competitive and could still go either way. While polling data provides valuable insights, it's not the only measure used to gauge the potential outcome of an election. Let's now turn our attention to the betting odds, which can sometimes capture trends and sentiments that polls might miss. These odds reflect where people are putting their money, which can offer a different perspective on the race.
Again, I think that this is better. Like, this is so much better to forecast because you
Starting in
have
the West,
people that
Arizona's
have their
betting
money
odds
there.
show Trump leading with 55% to Harris's 45%.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that even Democrats, when push comes to shove, if the data is there to show us that, okay, you might want to bet this way if you want to win. They'll even bet against who they want to win. They're not, I mean, some people bet hopefully, but I have learned one thing in, any type of sports betting scenario that, you don't want to necessarily always go for the team you want to win. It's just a
percent. In Nevada, Trump holds an advantage at 54% to 46%. Moving to the Midwest, Minnesota's odds overwhelmingly favor Harris at 94% to 6%. Wisconsin's betting odds give Harris a lead of 56% to 44%. Michigan shows Harris with a solid lead of 61% to 39% in the betting markets. In Pennsylvania, the betting odds favor Trump at 52% to 48%. Up in New Hampshire, Harris is strongly favored at 80% to 20%. Virginia's odds also lean heavily towards Harris at 84% to 16%. Down in North Carolina, Trump leads in the betting odds 60% to 40%. Finally, Georgia's odds favor Trump at 61% to 39%. These betting odds paint
well, those betting odds are a little bit different now.
picture of a race that's still
59 to
competitive,
40,
but
buddy.
with clearer leads in several states. Now, let's
we'll
translate these
call
betting
it.
odds into our electoral college map for the key battleground states. Remember, while these odds offer insights, they're not guaranteed predictors of the outcome. Starting in the Southwest, Arizona's 11 electoral votes are leaning towards Trump, with odds of 55% to 45% in his favor. Moving west to Nevada, Trump maintains his advantage at 54% to 46%, potentially securing its 6 electoral votes. Shifting to the Midwest, Minnesota shows overwhelming support for Harris at 94% to 6%, likely giving her its 10 electoral votes. Neighboring Wisconsin also favors Harris, though less decisively, at 56% to 44%, potentially adding its 10 electoral votes to her tally. In Michigan, Harris's lead of 61% to 39% suggests she could claim its crucial 16 electoral votes. However, Pennsylvania tells a different story, with Trump narrowly favored at 52% to 48%, possibly securing its 20 electoral votes. Up in New England, New Hampshire strongly backs Harris at 80% to 20%, likely giving her its 4 electoral votes. Moving south, Virginia also leans heavily towards Harris at 84% to 16%, potentially adding 13 more electoral votes to her column. In the Southeast, North Carolina favors Trump at 60% to 40%, suggesting he could win its 15 electoral votes. Similarly, Georgia leans towards Trump at 61% to 39%, potentially giving him its 16 electoral votes.
This still ain't good. Like, this is, again, for all the news coverage, for everything going on, do not get complaints. And I keep reiterating how much I hate that they're not putting, any of the midterms in this, because that's a little ridiculous, especially where, those swung so differently than everybody was
This
expecting,
betting odds-based map shows a competitive race with each candidate holding advantages in different regions. The ultimate decision, of course, rests with the voters on Election Day. Now, let's examine the overall betting odds for this presidential race, which have seen some significant...
Yeah, the problem I have with these betting odds is I have a feeling that they're looking at where he's doing the most interference and where he's already saying this. Like, he's already saying how he has a plan to steal the election, and he's kind of just telling us, like, yeah, he has enough people legitimately this time to question the voter rolls, so he can hold it up in court for as long as he wants. I mean, and then just seeing this, that's even scarier, because I have a feeling that people think he's going to actually get away with it, especially because these are people with enough money to sway those types of those betting pools.
Significant shifts over the course of the campaign. When President Biden unexpectedly dropped out of the race, former President Trump initially held a substantial lead over Vice President Harris in the betting markets. This reflected the sudden change in the Democratic ticket and uncertainty about Harris's position as the new nominee. However, the landscape has shifted.
Yeah, that's understandable. And I mean, if this isn't putting anything from the last 2 weeks into the betting pool or to the betting odds
Dramatically since then.
Well, again, I keep doing this, but I'm going to bring it back to this. This is today. This is the same poll, the exact same one that he was using. So I'm not going to sit here and panic right now. And this was only released 1 day ago.
The most recent overall betting odds show an incredibly tight race, with Trump holding a razor-thin lead at 50% to Harris's
It said the same thing in 2020, though.
49%.
But, I mean, We said the opposite in 2016.
Single percentage point difference underscores just how competitive this election has become. It's worth noting that these odds have been in flux recently, with neither candidate able to establish a commanding advantage. As we've seen,
That's interesting. Why don't we take a look at these numbers to prove you wrong?
both the polling data and betting odds paint a picture of a highly competitive race. With razor-thin margins in several key states and the overall odds nearly even, this election could truly come down to the wire. While these
Can I just say, even with this sped up, is it just me or are Americans looking a lot healthier? Because if this was 10 years ago, man, this would look a lot more unhealthy, a lot more country fried, if you know what I'm saying.
these indicators provide valuable insights, they're not crystal balls.
I don't have the best
Voter
diet, so-
turnout, last-minute developments, and the choices made in voting booths across the country will ultimately decide the outcome.
Yeah, keep saying that because realistically, that is exactly the truth. But betting markets being what they are, also, this is a new era where sports betting and the fact that it's not even sports betting, you're able to bet on anything. The fact that you were able to bet on professional wrestling, that should scare the crap out of all of you. Because it's kind of the same thing here, where there could be a determinative outcome where one source, that's all it takes, is just one source from the writing team to just be like, hey, buddy, so, you might want to put, $100,000 on Brock Lesnar showing up to the Royal Rumble tonight. It's like, well, Brock Lesnar hasn't been in the company for over 2 years. Well, I mean, that is my favorite part about wrestling is you never know who's going to show up. So, but yeah, I totally agree with everything that, was said there, except for this. We got to keep reminding people. The one thing that I'm going to start doing, though, is kind of keeping an eye on this. I'm going to save this website. But yeah, remember. Although that 5, man. That 5. Just remember, 5 out of 1,000 scenarios, nobody won this race. So, was it Giant Meteor? If it's Giant Meteor, I mean, I know it's kind of lame to say, but I'm just kidding. Alrighty, well, you know the deal. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm kind of trucking my way to 1,000. I really appreciate all the support. Any feedback is good. I do even appreciate some of you guys kind of, who are being a little bit mean, but it's okay. I understand that we all have to get it out some way, and this is one of those outlets, I guess. So, but yeah, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next one.